The United States is engaged in an oil blockade of Cuba, threatening any nation that dares to intervene.
It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless.
Your comments that Havana should be concerned about the Maduro operation is fueling speculation that this administration will turn its sights to Cuba next. Will you make a public commitment today to rule out U.S. regime change in Cuba?
Regime change?
Yes.
Oh, no, I think we would love to see the regime there change. We would like to, that doesn't mean that we're going to make a change, but we would love to see it change. There's no doubt about the fact that it would be of great benefit to the United States if Cuba was no longer governed by an autocratic regime.
But you know what we mean by regime change. We don't mean, I wish someone else were in charge. When we talk about regime change, we're talking about using the power of the United States, usually kinetic power, but often other kinds of coercion and I'm not even saying that that's always not in our interest. I'm just saying, I'm not asking you whether we would prefer a different kind of government. I'm asking whether you are trying to precipitate the fall of the current regime.
Yeah, but that's statutory. The Helms-Burton Act, the U.S. embargo on Cuba is codified. It was codified in law, and it requires regime change in order for us to lift the embargo.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
so is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire, internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Delcy Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
Dropsite News reports that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has apparently been lying to Donald Trump about negotiating with officials in both Cuba and Mexico, effectively blocking any possibility of dialogue.
Congresswoman, we broke some news at Dropsite today about Marco Rubio cutting President Trump off in negotiations about Cuba policy. He's been telling him that they've been in negotiations for a while, but in reality, it's been multiple weeks where that actually hasn't been the case. What's your reaction to that divide on foreign policy within the administration?
Well, I think I have to read the reporting that you're talking about, but this is what we've seen with Gaza, right? This is a new kind of era of depravity opened up, where there used to be, or there was this stated commitment on human rights that innocent civilians were almost exempt from the rules of war, from blockades, and what has transpired is that now it's kind of become acceptable that the entire Western world will look the other way as they starve and deprive a people because they find political actors or political regimes in that country to be objectionable. And so what we are seeing here is the possible precipice of hospitals running out of fuel. We're talking about innocent children, women that could be put in harm's way. And so, again, I have to look at the details of the reporting that you're sharing regarding Rubio specifically, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us to defend human rights, no matter where.
The people of Cuba are starving because of our country. They are cutting them off from the rest of the world through sanctions and total blockade of fuel. A country of 11 million people without fuel. Think about that. Homes, schools, hospitals without power, children without food or medicine. The forced starvation of entire, Cuban people. This is pure cruelty, and we all say it together: let Cuba live.
One word to describe the blockade.
Cruel.
Criminal.
It's inhuman. It's like a genocide to the group.
Describir el bloqueo no hay palabras.
Yo sufro mucho, mi hija no está aquí, pero yo sufro por los demás que veo pasando trabajo, cocinando con leña, con carbón, dentro de los apartamentos. Y todo se hace difícil, muy difícil. No hay palabras. No hay una sola palabra. Es tantas cosas el bloqueo.
Homicidio para el pueblo de Cuba.
Un abuso para todos.
Es una política genocida para asfixiarnos económicamente y el impacto es en el pueblo.
Es la salud, es la alimentación, es el combustible, que al estar parado, no tener combustible, todo está paralizado.
Here we are in the center of the town of Cuba called Holguín, where we came to bring food and to show support for the Cuban people who are suffering tremendously under this total siege that the Trump administration has imposed. But I must say that when you look around this beautiful square, it is absolutely clean. People are going about their lives with a lot of difficulty, but they are very resolute. I think they better come up with a plan of cooperation and treating Cuba with respect, because these people have a lot of dignity. They're very proud.
¿Qué van a hacer cuando ya no haya gasolina?
Bueno, pues nos trasladamos por nuestros propios medios, en bicicleta y en lo que sea posible, a pie. Pero continuaremos. Y la revolución no se va a decaer.
Cuba relies heavily on oil imports from Venezuela, and it's looking increasingly like the end goal of abducting Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro last month was to just starve Cuba into submission. Cuba's president Miguel Díaz-Canel blasted President Donald Trump, saying, "The collapse lies in the imperial mindset, but not in the mindset of the Cubans. I know we're going to live through difficult times, but we will overcome them together with creative resilience." And Cuba's UN ambassador Ernesto Subaran Guzman laid the blame firmly at Marco Rubio's feet, debunking his revolutionary exile family fairy tale in the process. Guzman said, "What is clear to me is that Rubio has never come to Cuba, and he's talking about something he knows nothing about. His parents came to the US before the revolution. It's false, this image people have that they came to the United States running away from the revolution. They came to the United States fleeing the dictatorship that existed in Cuba, which was supported by the US government at the time under then Cuban President Fulgencio Batista. Here's hoping that some country with less vested interest in being friendly with America has both the courage and the conviction to stand in solidarity with Cuba against Marco Rubio's disgusting, weird kink for interfering in South American countries he knows nothing about." If you enjoyed that, then make sure that you never miss another video by subscribing. And if you want a little more, consider hitting the join button and becoming a member. So you're probably wondering, why would I do that? Well, when you do that, you get access to bonus content that I make every single week, and it's a lot of fun. You get custom emojis and more. If you join at tier 3, by the way, you even get access to a monthly member hangout with myself. And you'll get all that going forward, but you'll also unlock years of the back catalog that is literally 100 or more bonus clips and top 10 lists and debates and more. So what are you waiting for?